21. And so that triggered me, and here I am. And now we have added, for crying out loud, reproductive health, Roe v. Wade, children being shot dead in schools, permanent miscarriage, and I'm going, well, I'm glad I'm running.
Yeah.
It has gotten bigger and bigger and worse and worse. And I'll have to tell you, we're going to have a crazy legislature again, unless, of course, you vote for me. But whatever the crazy legislature does, we will have a governor that will say no.
That's right.
So I am thrilled to introduce Beto, who will be that governor saying no.
Abilene Holly, good to be with you. Linda, thank you. I say yes to Linda. No to the crazy shit. Yes to Linda. Elizabeth, thank you for organizing us, getting us kicked off, bringing us together. All of you for spending part of your Friday with us. It's really amazing. I was just thinking about the fact that 2 days ago, as I was looking at this map, I woke up here in Longview, Texas. And we had a great town hall meeting there the night before. I went for my morning run the next day. Then we drove up to Wichita Falls, and we had a great town hall meeting there. Then we drove up to Amarillo, which, as tall as I am, I can't reach, but you all see where it is. Today, we came down to Midland, Texas. We just had a town hall there midday, and now we're back in Abilene right here. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is our 5th visit to Abilene in the last 11 months. I don't know, and look, I come from a city that's even harder to get to than Abilene. It's El Paso, Texas. It's all the way over here. Do I have any El Pasoans? I have one person who knows what I'm talking about, two who knows what I'm talking about. I mean, Longview to El Paso, it is harder to be separated by more miles and still be in the same state, right? We're in 2 different time zones. But whether it's El Paso or Longview or Wichita Falls or Amarillo or Midland or Abilene, one of the things that all these communities have in common is that almost no one shows up to listen to and learn from and work with the people that they want to serve. I don't know, tell me if I've got this wrong, but I don't know how many times you've seen Greg Abbott show up here, where anyone is welcome to come out and listen to him, and where he listens to you about the things that are most important in your lives and how he can better deliver for this community. I know Linda has not just been here and been showing up here, but she's going to every single part of her district, writing nobody off, leaving no one behind, taking no one for granted, making sure no one is forgotten at the end of the day, because there's been way too much of that already. We are as divided as I can remember us being in my 50 years on the planet. Every day of that, a Texan, a 4th generation at that, raising the 5th generation. This is not who we are. Hating one another, fearful of each other, simply based on our differences. Your sexual orientation, your religion, your immigration status, how many generations you've been here, or whether you got here 10 days ago, the letter next to your name, who you voted for president, all of that stuff doesn't matter. No me importa. What matters now at this moment of truth is what we do by and for one another going forward. The challenges could not be any greater. And it's part of why I'm so damn hopeful and optimistic seeing you all out here, because instead of relenting or submitting or succumbing to this temptation to despair, and I would forgive you if you had those thoughts, you've chosen to come out and be part of the solution. There are some who said, you know what, I'm getting the heck out of Texas, right? You've got those friends and family members who have said that. Or I'm just going to sit this one out because I just don't like politics. It's become so hateful and confusing, and I just don't know if this stuff works anymore. There are others who just say, you know what, I guess this is the price of living and maybe of dying in the state of Texas, and I've just come to accept that as my fate. But not us, and not the people of this state, and not those folks in Longview and Wichita Falls Amarillo, in Midland, and El Paso. I don't care how red they say these communities are supposed to be. I don't care when folks say, hey, Beto, remember you're a Democrat and you're not supposed to show up in Abilene, because we can see it glowing red from outer space as we're orbiting the Earth. That's not what I see. I see you. And you're Democrats, you're independents, you're Republicans, but before you're any of that, you're Texans, you're Americans, and you're human beings. Yeah. You want to make sure that you treat one another with that respect and dignity that we deserve as human beings. And so I'm really encouraged. And I got to tell you that the first message I want to give you is one of Thanksgiving. On this 5th visit, which may very well be the last as a candidate for this office before this election is called on the 8th of November. You all have shown up and turned out every single time we've come out. In fact, the first time that we were here just during this campaign, which was in November, we were at, you gotta remind me of the name of it, it is the miniature golf place. That's right, I've got the t-shirt from it. And I met Seiler and Alden and Meyer there, and I remember when I came in, they gave me these finger puppets that I have kept in my truck the entire time. And you all know Cynthia Connell, who's right here. Cynthia, if you want to stand up. Cynthia's been, she organizes everything here on the road. We have been together in the front of this Toyota Tundra with Chris and John, who are referred to as the hotties in the back, sitting on the back bench, right? But the four of us in this Tundra for the better part of this last year, literally going everywhere. And for those of you who are married or have brothers and sisters, you know how sick you can become of somebody when you're spending way too much time with them, right? Well, no different between us, even though we're on this campaign. And so I just want you all to know, sometimes I use the finger puppet when Cynthia's no longer talking to me and she wants to talk to somebody else. We communicate through these finger puppets. They really come in handy, so I want to thank you for that. That's some real Abilene creativity and kindness that has come through for us at this moment. Thank you all. And also I want to share this note of optimism with you. I know what we're up against. Just as you know what we're up against right now. And not just the odds. It's been 32 years since this state elected a Democrat to the highest office in the land. Happens to have been probably the best governor we've had in our lifetimes. Richard, it's just phenomenal. And it's all about the people and letting the people in. It's been more than 25 years that Republicans have had essentially unitary control of our government at every level. And more recently, that government has been defined by the way we're supposed to be afraid of one another, something that I touched on at the beginning. You know, you ask the governor a legitimate question about the grid or our schools or this foster care program that is so badly broken, and he'll try to distract you by talking about transgender children and how we should be afraid of them and lock their parents up for child abuse. You ask him about why we're not attaining where we should be when it comes to public ed, and he may say, watch out for CRT, and be afraid of our own history and stories and the things that we can share and learn about one another. He'll have us point at immigrants coming in to invade us and get us and take us and do terrible things to us. But I know that's not who we are at our core or at our essence. And I know that's not just those of us who are Democrats, that's those of us who are Texans. So I just want you to know that against these challenges, these long odds, these threats, this history of the last 32 years, there is all of us. And it's all of us all across the state of Texas. I am seeing turnout at events like these that I never saw in 2018 when we ran that extraordinary race together for the United States Senate, where together we produced turnout that was higher than at any point in Texas since 1970. Young voter turnout was up 504% from the previous midterm year. We got 2.5 points away from Ted Cruz, but maybe more importantly, there were a lot of good candidates like Linda, Democrats running against Republicans, 12 of whom won those races and replaced those incumbents. 2 new members of Congress who flipped control of that institution from Republicans to Democrats in 2018. In Harris County alone, 17 black women were elected to judicial positions in the most diverse city in America. all of us that made all of that happen. And we did it believing in one another and doing the work necessary in order to win these elections. But that was simply the base that we built 4 years ago. And it is atop that we are all coming together right now. And I want to share this with you 3 days out from early voting. We are going to win this election. And we know we're going to win because we're here today and because we're fighting for the right things. For every woman to make her own decisions about her own body, her own future, her own health care. We're fighting to prioritize the lives of our kids over the interests of the NRA or the gun lobby or any politician in the state of Texas. We're running to have the backs of our public school educators, our counselors, our librarians, our classroom teachers, our retired teachers, who have not seen a cost of living adjustment in 18 years. Good thing the prices have not gone up in the last 18 years, or we'd really be in some trouble right now. Can you imagine having the same income for the last 18 years after you gave the best years of your life, literally, to the children of this state, probably having to work a second or third job in order to make ends meet? I'm going to make sure that after we win, those retired teachers get a cost of living adjustment every single year going forward. Those teachers in the classroom who are so underpaid today, that we raise their salaries so they don't have to work that second or third job in the first place. That we show them the respect, treat them with that respect that they've earned and deserved. And when they tell us, listen, these kids in front of me in the classroom, after 2 years of pandemic, 2 years of learning loss, 2 years of trauma, where 100,000 of our fellow Texans died during this pandemic. They've lost their grandparents in some cases. Their folks have lost their jobs. Their families have lost their homes. And I'm just trying to keep them alive, you have told me. The last thing I need is a high-stakes, high-pressure test that in no way effectively measures their potential or my effort that I'm expending on their behalf. So when we win, we're going to cancel the STAR test. So I can focus on those kids that come here and get the job done to stand up for in the first place. Those veterans who are among us, I just want to say that you did everything that this country asked you to do. And we, as a people, spared no expense sending you into harm's way. And perhaps risking your life in the process or asking you to take the lives of others in the name of this country. But far too often, when you have come back, we are found wanting and making sure that you have the resources, the help, the care, the connections that you need to be able to continue to serve in another capacity. I think about the Vietnam-era veteran who came back from a war that this country never fully understood or explained to itself. Came back not to ticker tape parades or thank you for your service, at best indifference, and at the worst hatred from their fellow Americans. Nonetheless, got their heads down, got after it, raised their families, went to work, started businesses, created jobs, ran for office, did all these wonderful things that made Abilene, Texas, and America the place it is today. But those Vietnam-era veterans had to wait 40 years, 4 decades, for the Agent Orange that they were exposed to while they served all of us to be treated as the presumptive condition for the cancers that consumed far too many. 40 years, 4 decades, before this country spent a dime helping those who are willing to lose their lives for us. Those veterans have so impressed me, not only because ultimately after 4 decades, they won the right to have that care and treatment that they've earned, but they're first in line right now standing up for the Iraq and Syria and Somalia and Yemen and Afghanistan era veteran who's come back, having breathed in God only knows what from these toxic burn pits, having a harder time breathing here when they're back in Texas and Abilene. They're saying, look, I will not allow this country to wait 40 years to do the right thing again. They were able to help get legislation passed in D.C. earlier this year, and you all will help us to stand up a toxic burn pit registry in the state of Texas to connect every veteran with the care that they need, to make sure that we pay any price, that we bear any burden necessary to ensure that every homeless veteran has a roof over their head as well. And for those who go to the VA, and come back saying, look, they were all too willing to prescribe an opioid to me, from which I may become addicted and potentially die as tens of thousands of my fellow Americans have. But there's something else that I can use that addresses my symptoms, that restores my appetite, that allows me to sleep. But to use it today in Texas, I'm a criminal in the eyes of the law. That's why we're going to legalize marijuana in the state of Texas and we win. And given the fact that black and brown Texans have disproportionately served time and been forced after release to check a box on every employment application form, on every student loan application form, on every small business loan application form, on every barber's license application form, saying that they have this conviction, we're going to expunge the arrest records for those who serve time for possession of this substance. It is just the right thing to do. And then there's this. And that is what we're basically doing right now. We are participating in our democracy. We have freely come out and joined together without any of us asking the other what party we belong to or the differences between us. All are welcome. This is a public space. Republicans, Democrats, Beto supporters, Abbott supporters alike, all are welcome to be here right now at this moment. And it's a pretty special thing. It's the exception over the course of world history. It flourished for a few years or a few decades, 2,000 years ago in Greece. Revived again 246 years ago in North America. And ever since, more or less, más o menos, we've been making it better. At the outset, if you wanted to vote, you had better be white and own property. And we should all remember that property could have included other human beings. By 1965, the first Texas president signs the Voting Rights Act into law, making this country the first true multiracial democracy on the planet. Today in Texas, despite those gains, it is harder to vote. It is harder to register to vote, to get your name on the rolls, to participate in this next election than it is anywhere else in America. In fact, in March of this year, during our primary elections, a 95-year-old World War II veteran, in other words, a guy who was willing to lose his life fighting fascism over there to defend democracy here, had his ballot by mail request in the middle of a pandemic rejected not once, but 3 times. And I don't know if he was a Republican or a Democrat, because it doesn't matter. But no one among us has more earned the right to vote than that guy who is willing to give his life for our right to vote right now. So this is Texas today, but it does not have to be Texas tomorrow. I propose that after we win, we make sure that every eligible citizen is able to easily, fairly, and freely cast that ballot. Online voter registration, automatic voter registration, so that when you turn 18, you're automatically on the rolls. Same-day voter registration, so when you change addresses, you're good to go. Making sure that the gerrymander that Linda has to contend with right now, where those in the state legislature choose their voters instead of the other way around, is replaced with citizen-led redistricting commissions that ensure that you draw the boundaries and people like me and Greg Abbott are left outside of the room. Citizens instead of politicians. And then this idea that I like a lot. In a state where the minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour, and for far too many, getting time off of work is a luxury in order to vote, I propose that we replace Confederate Heroes Day as a celebrated state holiday with Election Day as a celebrated state holiday. So we can take the day off of work and get it done. And lastly, the other big reason I know that we're going to win is that we have the good fortune of running against the worst governor in the United States of America. And look, I don't for a second think that this guy wakes up wanting us to lead the nation in the number of school shootings, though we do. I don't think he wakes up wanting the grid to fail and still not be fixed going into the next winter, although that's where we are right now. I don't think that he planned to raise our property taxes by $20 billion over the last 8 years, but you and I today in Texas are paying more in taxes than our fellow Americans are in California. He's the single greatest driver of inflation in this state right now. And it's all the case we need to know and to share with our Republican brothers and sisters that after 8 years Though he may have tried to do his best, for whatever reason, he wasn't able to get the job done, and it's time to turn the page and to vote for change. If we need more reasons to get people, here are a few numbers I want you to keep in mind. It's been 2 months since the most extreme abortion ban in America went into effect. It was signed by Greg Abbott last year. It begins at conception. There is no exception for rape. There is no exception for incest. It takes place in a state that's at the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis. That means women in Texas dying at a faster rate than almost anywhere else in the country, or the developed world for that matter. And it is 3 times as bad for black women right now in the state of Texas. Some may say, and I was just asked by a reporter about this, well, how in the world are you going to overcome this? How do we win this election and get it done? 50 years ago, abortion just as illegal in Texas as it is today. But no one rode to the rescue of Texas women and girls. In fact, it was young Texas women who rode to the rescue of the rest of the country. Jane Roe of Roe versus Wade, Linda Coffey, who still lives in Dallas, Texas, and Sarah Weddington, who happens to be from bright blue Abilene, Texas. Those 3 young women prevailed upon an all-male United States Supreme Court half a century ago and won protection for the right to privacy, to make very personal, often very painful decisions without government interference or intrusion. In other words, they won freedom, not just for themselves, but for every woman in this country. So here's my bet. If it was Texas women who won the way in 1973, it'll be Texas women who win it back in 2022. Get behind them and put it. It was 21 weeks ago that 19 children and their 2 teachers were slaughtered in their classroom in Uvalde, Texas. Absolutely defenseless against someone at the age of 18 who could buy not 1, but 2 AR-15s and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. I told you I was just in Wichita Falls. I met a Vietnam-era veteran there after the Parkland shootings who said, you know what, Beto, I have something like the AR-15, but these young people today are better armed than I was in the jungles of Vietnam. He was reminding me that the AR-15 was originally designed and engineered and sold to the United States Army to kill enemy soldiers at a distance of 500 yards, 5 football fields away, penetrate a steel helmet, and knock that enemy soldier down dead. Now just think about this, and I know it's hard to, but those kids were not at 500 yards. They were 5 feet, maybe, nothing on their head but a baseball cap. Their parents only able to identify their bodies by the shoes that they were wearing. But those kids were also defenseless against Greg Abbott, because we've had 5 of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history in just the last 5 years, right here in the state of Texas. And the only thing he's done is make it easier for people who should not have firearms to begin with to carry them openly on our streets. Law enforcement begged him not to sign permitless carry into law. We had a license to carry program that said, look, if you want to carry a gun in public, we're okay with that. Just go through this background check. Go through some training so we know you're proficient in this firearm before you try to use it in public. And we want to vet you to make sure you're not going to use it against yourself, against your wife, or against these kids in this classroom. 38,000 times over the last 6 years, law enforcement intervened in our license to carry program and said, hold on a second. This guy, that gal over there, too dangerous to have a gun on our streets. Greg Abbott turned his back on those police officers and sheriff's deputies and signed permitless carry anyhow. Now, all 38,000 of those who were previously denied are probably armed on our streets, and none of us are the safer or the wiser for it. And tens of thousands more who knew never to apply for a license to carry are now free to carry without us knowing about them either. That is why homicides in Texas are up 50% since he has become governor. We know that we can do so much better. We're Texans. Just like you, I grew up in the state. Just like you, I grew up with firearms in the household. I remember my uncle Raymond O'Rourke who was the jailer at the El Paso County Jail and won the Marksman's Award from the County Sheriff's Department. He taught me and my sisters how to shoot. He taught me the responsibility of owning that firearm. That is all that I want to get back to. It's that proud, long tradition of responsible gun ownership. Raising the age of purchase for an AR-15 to 21. Having a red flag law so we can intervene before it is too late. Having a universal background check that just says, look, if you want to buy a gun in Texas, that's fine. We just want to make sure that we do a little due diligence so that we can protect the lives of those in our lives. What do you all think? I think we can lean on this issue. Defend the Second Amendment and protect the lives of those in our lives. And then there's this number. It's the number 18. 18 months ago, the temperature dropped in the energy capital of the world, the great big beautiful state of Texas. And when the temperature dropped, the grid failed. The lights went out, the heat stopped running, the water froze in the pipes and no longer flowed out of our faucets. 700 of our fellow Texans died, including members of this community right here. They froze to death in their homes. They were found dead in their trucks of hypothermia. They burned up in their homes and apartments when their parents set fire to their furniture, trying to keep their kids warm. Little girls who died next to their moms in the garage, in their car, of carbon monoxide poisoning. 700 lives in this state. And while that was happening, our governor, Greg Abbott, ordered the price of electricity pegged at its highest allowable rate, not for minutes, not for hours, but for days. Gas soon started trading at 200 times what it had sold for the day before. Utilities went into bankruptcy. Others took billions of dollars in debt. But Greg Abbott's best friends and largest campaign contributors, their companies made billions of dollars in profit. In fact, $11 billion in profit over the course of 5 days. It has been called the largest transfer of wealth in Texas history. Here's the kicker. The grid is still not fixed. There were 3 conservation notices this summer, meaning they asked you to jack your thermostat near to 80 degrees. Toyota, the factory in San Antonio, cut their 3rd shift because it was drawing too much power down from a grid that was too unreliable. And the bag got passed to all of us. We're all now paying, on average, $45 more per month on our electricity bill. Well, here's the answer to that. We win this election. We winterize and weatherize every part of the grid. We connect our grid, called ERCOT, with the national grid so we can draw down power when we need it, sell it back up when we have a surplus. And because I know that this is a law and order crowd that believes in justice, I know you'll appreciate that when we win, we're going to take those bastards who stole the $11 billion from us to court and get every penny back for the people of Texas. Reduce their rates in the process. And this is the very last number I want to give you, and I'll conclude with this. And that's the number 8. It has been 8 years that Greg Abbott has been the governor of this state. He was the Attorney General before that. He was on the state Supreme Court before that. He was an elected judge or appointed judge before that. This guy has been in some form of office in Texas for a very long time, has had power for a very long time, has had the responsibility that comes with that for a very long time. So what you see in Texas today is owing to him. And whether it's any of those things that I talked about or touched on, like a CPS system that has 32,000 kids in foster care who are sleeping in CPS offices tonight in the hallways, under the desks, on the tables, which has lost the lives of 100 children in CPS custody and care just since 2020. This happened on Greg Abbott's watch. But because he can't defend this record, he will seek to deflect or deny or distract. He's going to talk about socialism and open borders and all sorts of things that we're supposed to be scared of and associate with one candidate or another. But the ground that he's chosen more than any other is the Texas-Mexico border. He's going to want to make us afraid of those who seek to come to this country. And we begin by acknowledging that we have some real challenges and threats at our border with Mexico. There are those who want to traffic fentanyl into this country, and that fentanyl will kill you, and it's killing too many of our fellow Texans. There are others who smuggle human beings, modern-day slavery that is taking place in this state right now, coming across our border. But there are also those who want to work jobs that we cannot fill in Roscoe at the cotton gin not too far from here, or at the cotton growing operation in Lamesa that I visited just a couple of years ago, or in construction companies, or high-wage, high-tech jobs for that matter in Austin, Texas, but they cannot find the safe, legal, orderly path to get there. There are others who want to join families, but are waiting in a line that stretches 20 years long when you try to immigrate from Mexico or India or the Philippines right now because of these ridiculous visa caps that we have in place. And still more, who seek asylum in this country because they can't stay where they are from. And they might very well lose their lives or the lives of their children. John Lewis, the extraordinary civil rights hero who compelled LBJ to sign the Voting Rights Act in 1965, was also a member of Congress. And I had the chance and the honor to serve with him. And he had this saying that you all have probably heard before, that at one point or another, we all came to this country in a different ship. But today, we find ourselves in the same boat. And he was trying to tell a story about this motto, E pluribus unum, that out of many one. We come from the planet over and have found a home right here in Texas. Some of our foremothers and forefathers crossed the land bridge over the Bering Strait 15,000 years ago and came all the way down to Texas. So a reminder that this was originally native or indigenous land. Others were kidnapped in Africa, brought here in bondage, and against their will, forced to build the strength, the success, and the wealth of America, though in their lifetimes, they would never be able to partake in it. And then there were others like my family, the O'Rourke's, who knew in the 19th century that to stay in Ireland meant to die in Ireland. There was a famine in that country that ultimately claimed the lives of more than 1 million people. And so they left, and they came to the one place in the world that would take them in. That happened to be the United States of America. I just want you to think about this. When we read the story about those 53 migrants who were found dead in the back of the trailer in San Antonio earlier this year, you know, the human impulse and instinct, and I feel it as well, is to move on to the next story. It's just too painful to contemplate. I don't want to go there. I don't understand it. It's just awful. But we have this extraordinary power, unique in the animal kingdom, of empathy, of placing ourselves in somebody else's situation and imagining what that would be like for us. And I just want you to think for a second, what in the world would compel you to get into the back of that trailer? Which wouldn't be easy, by the way. I don't know, but I think probably it's about this high to get in. You have to climb up. If you're strong enough, you can lift yourself. If you're not, someone hoists you up, or maybe there's a step stool or a ladder. Imagine you're now in this trailer, and you have already traveled 2,000 miles from El Salvador, right? The length of this continent. Some of it atop a train known as La Bestia, or the Beast, some of it on foot. And you're in this trailer now, and you look down at your 11-year-old daughter, who you made this journey with, and you reach down and you grab her hand and you pick her up. And it's in Texas, it's in the summer, there's no air conditioning in that trailer. You know, as soon as she jumps in, they are slamming those doors shut, and God only knows what will happen next. You would never in 1,000,000 years, or for $1 million, do this for kicks, or to steal someone's job, or to come here to commit crimes. You would do it if it were the only way to save her life. Amy and I were raising a 15, a 14, and an 11-year-old in our home right now. And we've asked ourselves, what in the world would compel us to ever leave El Paso, leave Texas, to leave the United States of America, to put our kids in harm's way the way these kids were put in harm's way? It would have to be pretty damn dire for us to do the same. Well, that is Haiti and El Salvador and Honduras and Guatemala and so many parts of the world today. So all I ask is that we stop trafficking in this rhetoric of invasion, trying to make us fearful of those who are just trying to do the right thing by and for themselves, and ultimately by and for all of us. That we don't bus migrants to Chicago or DC or New York and pretend that that's a solution. That we don't warn Texans, as Greg Abbott did in 2019, that we must defend ourselves against this invasion and take matters into our own hands. That was literally the rhetoric he used on the eve of someone driving from Allen, Texas, to my hometown of El Paso, armed with an AK-47, walking into a Walmart and blowing away and killing 23 people who looked like immigrants to him, posting beforehand that he had come to repel the invasion of Hispanics that he had been warned about that were coming to take over this country and replace him in Texas. Instead of all of that, all of us can come up with something far better. If you want to work in this country, I want to make sure there's a safe, legal, orderly path for you to do that. A Texas-based guest worker program that we can come up with right here in Abilene and El Paso. Republicans and Democrats alike, welcome to the table. If you want to come here from Mexico and you don't want to wait 20 years, I don't want you to jump the line and break the law. I want to use our power and persuade our federal partners to lift those visa caps so there's a safe, legal, orderly path to come to this country. And if you're seeking an asylum, today the wait time is 6 years for your claim to be adjudicated. Imagine that 11-year-old girl that you're with and you're in a refugee camp in Ciudad Juarez on the other side of the border from El Paso today. I understand some of you may be willing to wait and will be able to wait those 6 years. But far too many literally can't. And though I don't condone it, I understand why they might try to cross into this country anyhow, jump that line, move in between our ports of entry. Let's make sure that for them, there's a safe, legal, orderly path that doesn't take 6 years. It takes 6 months or six weeks to adjudicate that claim and allow them and all of us to get on with our lives and say firmly, look, if you want to come to this country, you've got to follow the law. Our laws will follow our values and our needs and our interests and this history that has made us the greatest state and the greatest nation, bar none, in world history. These are the great things that we are going to be able to do together. But it's going to take all of us working together to make this possible. This election will not be won by the candidate or by my political party. It can only be won by all of us. There are folks here who have these yellow reflective vests on. They're not filling potholes out there. They are signing you up to knock on doors, to meet voters where they are, and specifically those voters who have been targeted for suppression and intimidation, the very people drawn out of this democracy. I was told by Cynthia earlier that in this county in 2020, in the most important presidential election of our lifetimes, 23,000 eligible registered voters didn't cast a ballot. 9,000 more have entered the rolls since that election. Young people who just turned 18 or 19, people who just naturalized and now have voting rights, returning citizens who served their time, were incarcerated, and now can vote again. Those 23,000 plus those 9,000, imagine that many new voters, voices, and votes coming into this election, and that is just in one county. I need your help to reach them. From your own heart, in your own words, reaching their own ears, you're going to describe why this is the election of our lifetimes. The number one reason given by those eligible non-voters for not voting is that no one ever asked them to vote in the first place. They are literally waiting for you. They're waiting for us right now. So before you leave, one of our volunteers in yellow is going to ask you if you'd be willing to knock on a few doors or make a few phone calls if you don't feel comfortable knocking on doors. But however you do it and whatever it takes, we're going to reach voters where they are and bring them out. And when we all do this together, we're going to win this election. You all ready to win? All right, we've got to do the work to get it done. We're going to be in it with you 3 days to early vote. It starts on Monday, Election Day, November 8th. Abilene, thank you for welcoming us out again. Let's get after it and go win this election. Let's go. Thank you.
If y'all would like to stay and take a picture, so I would love to do that. We're going to go ahead and line up on this side, and we will exit on this side.